This is Julien, and I'm here in Denver, Colorado. And what we're going to crack into here is a segment from Transformation Mastery Live, where Owen and I were answering a few questions at the end of the event surrounding the topic of healing yourself. Okay, the importance of healing yourself, the benefits of healing yourself. Enjoy. Right now, you know how to do it. You've done it. It's not magical. It's not woo-woo. You don't have to go to the 27th dimension and see aliens and shit. It's just not something that we're taught to do and not something that we're used to doing.
Let it all out! Let it out! Let it take over! Let it out until there's nothing more to let out!
This is the stuff that changed my life. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's hard. And it's intense. We always tend to think, oh, you know, inner work. Just sit down and, sit down, meditate. No, it's this. I want you to bring your awareness to some of those moments you might have abandoned yourself. Whether it's a recent moment where there was something you know you should have said. There was that little voice inside just crying out, just fucking say it. Just fucking do it. And you didn't, and you betrayed yourself. You betrayed that you. You told that you to shut the fuck up and go back into the shadows where it belongs.
I lost her!
Breathe into it. Those moments where you abandon yourself. This approach will fucking change your life like no other. And what you'll notice is that the more you do it, the more you re-own, subtle changes will happen. Subtle but powerful changes will happen. Take a few moments for yourself here to let things settle and to experience perhaps a shift inside. Perhaps a feeling of relief, of peace, of conclusion, of finally having let go of some of the stuff that's just been running you, holding you back, and poisoning that experience of you.
Do any of you guys look at Julien or even any other guys in RSD in a way where they almost look like they have like godlike powers or anything like that when you actually look at them? A lot of people will come up to me and say that. It's frequent. I hear this all the time. And the thing what's funny though is that it's not like, it's totally absurd, right? It's beyond absurd. But the reason it will look like that is because whenever you raise your energy level, whenever you raise your state, regular people who haven't done that will look at you with awe. And so, and you'll see this everywhere you go. It's like you're walking on water. But it's really not that complicated. It's just that in society, the bar is set so low. So few people ever take the time. They're so unconscious and unaware that they're kind of just stuck where they're at. So what'll start to happen is as you're doing this work, that same effect that you might see, say you see RC instructor and you're like, whoa, you'll start to get that exact same thing. And you'll realize it's really not mysterious. You can really see a marked difference between people who hang on to things and get triggered versus people who let things go. And by the way, once you make this shit, it gets to the point it's kind of comical because you see people that can't let shit go and they're just looping and looping. It's just eating them. And you're like, dude or girl, like, whoa, hey, come on, let it go. And unfortunately, as it loops and loops, it can create some very bad decisions. So you've got to be, and I've seen it with many of the people closest in my life, close people in my life who I love very dearly, and I would just watch them do this to themselves. And unfortunately, you know, you can tell your friends and family about it, but people kind of have to be ready. So even some of the smartest people in the world just make these mistakes. And then unfortunately, that negative energy feeds off itself and can start attacking those closest to them. And then they get into a loop and poof. So just keep that in mind that, you know, at what point do you say this isn't worth it? Whatever payoff I'm getting from this is not worth it, and just let you go. And so that's what we're focusing on here today.
So much shit in the world, and this is my opinion, is provoked due to past trauma. It's ways of coping with yourself. And it's sometimes that's the best you know. It's like there's nothing else you know, and that's how you cope with it. Or you're triggered, and then a whole fucking war starts, you know? And that's really a big one I noticed. It's like, you're just less triggered. Like there was stuff where I'd hold grudges and someone would say something and it would just take over. And the way you know you're triggered, by the way, is when it's done. First of all, there's a lot of blame, and then there's a little bit of guilt and regret. You'll rationalize it very fast, like, yeah, but still, but there's a little bit of that. And if you think about it too, just how triggered we are by default, how much of your life is actually in your control? How much of you are is in your control? You're pretty much living this life a slave to your triggers, a slave to past traumas. In reaction, there's no proactive, I'm gonna go this way now. It's always backtracking and dealing with the consequences and being triggered again.
You want to build that, but with, say, present energy. And that's why we talk about this all the time. We first learned about it with Success with Women because you have clients that are being just blown apart. They get dumped and they freak out, or they have a rough night out, they freak out. And so we were always trying to help clients build their inner game because it's killing them while they're trying to learn Success with Women. I mean, it's just destroying them. So from there, we're like, well, what other applications does this have? Could this have an application in career or business? Could this have application, frankly, in just happiness in and of itself? I mean, fuck the whole like opposite sex or career, just in and of itself being happy. So then we start to look at that. And it's very frequent that people go through phases to where initially we want to get, say, the best body or make the most money or be the most accomplished or knock off the most goals. And then as we do those, we get a weird irony to where it's never, for most of us anyway, maybe you could be different, but for many of us, it's not quite as satisfying as what we anticipated. And Eckhart Tolle, who's maybe my favorite author or teacher of all time, he would say there's two things that can make you unhappy. The first is not getting what you want. The second is getting what you want. And oftentimes getting what you want actually drives you more crazy. So for me growing up, I was really miserable, and I always believed that when I got older, when I got what I want, I'd be happy. So by the time I was 26, I think I made my first $2 million paycheck. I sunk that back in my company quite rapidly, but the point is to have that was incredible. I was living in an oceanfront apartment, had a super hot girlfriend, fucked my brains out every day. And this apartment, I mean, it was cartoonish. It's on the ocean. Like the ocean is like that wall, and it's Hawaii, and you can see Waikiki here. I'm eating in 5-star dinners every night, and just working in the day, going and taking swims, doing hiking in the rainforest, bodyboarding. Did I mention sex on the balcony of the ocean? Sex in the bed.
You haven't yet.
So I was having sex on the balcony of the ocean, okay? And so basically, that was like what I had always dreamed of, right? And so I thought I'd be really happy when that happened. But I noticed actually that I wasn't very happy. And it was weird, but a lot of my pain body or low vibration energy was getting triggered more and more and more. And what was weird was I started to feel crazy. Because at least in the past, when you have this goal that you want to get to, yeah, it's like you have hope. But what happens is, I mean, even though I could say, well, I want a $10 million check or $20 million, which is what most people do, a lot of rich people do that, I was at least smart enough not to fall into that because I was like, look, the 2 is still pretty good. I mean, I know I can get 10 or 20 or 200, but like 2 mil, like for like a little kid, it's like, okay, like we're doing okay here. So at that point, I realized I'm sick. Like I'm a sick man. There's something very wrong. But then I started realizing almost everybody's like that. It's kind of like the human condition. And so what happened in my case was I got more and more depressed, and it ratcheted up until one day what I realized I was doing was I was playing a character in my life to try to get love and acceptance. And yet, the more love and acceptance and adulation that I got for that character, that's why Julien talks a lot about in this program about authenticity, the more that inauthentic, and it wasn't like super inauthentic, but it was just enough of a tweak to who I really was, that as that character got more and more adulation and love and affection, it was actually starving my self-esteem. So the ego is getting built, but it's actually starving self-esteem because you're like, well, if it was a real me, I would have no real love or affection, right? Not unconditional love. I know with my parents, they definitely tried as best they could. And then at the same time, I think we all know what it means when someone says they tried as best they could. I'm sure many of your parents tried as best they could and did the best they knew how to, right? And so what happens is, when that unconditional love need isn't quite met in childhood, you're sitting here as an adult, maybe you say if you're a man, you fixate on women. If you're a woman, you fixate on men. There's this need or a compulsion to be filled. Say you go out to a nightclub, you try to talk to people, there's this crazy need for approval there, this insane neediness. Weirdly, I've seen, whenever I have a client who has great parents, they usually don't have that need. It's really interesting. Now, you may have had great parents and still have that need. Fair enough. It's not, or you may think that you have it bad, but there's people way worse as well. But people with great parents don't have that need. So that being the case, let's look at what we did here then. Let's bring it full circle. So what Julien did here is he's doing a lot of release work but he's also trying to bring in self-love. So self-love, what it's doing is that essentially love is like a loop, right? So say you had a really bad breakup. You love your girlfriend, and then she returns love back, right? Ideally. And so basically what happens is it becomes a loop. Now, when you have a breakup, what happens? It's like, if you're, especially if you weren't really happy about the breakup, like you didn't want it, what winds up happening is like, it's like this kind of bleed, you almost bleed out of love. Like it kind of bleeds out to where you're like, I love you. And they're just like, boom, right? And you ever seen a girl where like, if you've lost status in her eyes, when you just become like repulsive, like she borderline hates you even though she used to love you? Who has ever had that? Like your ex like hates you. Okay, it can get really intense, right? And one of the most shocking things about it is you're like, is it almost like the love is like gushing out and it's not being returned, and it starts to fuck you up really bad. That's why I actually don't like it when guys go rebound right away, in my personal view, but there's different opinions on that, and I respect the different opinions, but just in my experience, after a breakup, like, take it easy. Like, you don't necessarily need to go have sex right away. I say just like, go out and just socialize with everybody and have a fun time with everybody. Go on dates. You don't have to fuck every girl, because it's like, just get used to being back in a state of self-love. Otherwise, you're just gushing and gushing, and then you just attach that needy leechiness onto a new person before you become whole. The most important thing before you get into any relationship is that you become whole. So a lot of what we're doing here is looking for wholeness, letting go of trauma, and getting to a state where that there's a loop of self-love. And then if you have a partner who also really loves himself too, now you have what's called synergy. So a codependent relationship is 0 + 0 = 0, where you fight with them, they fight with you. It's like you have a remote control, and it's like you can just go boom, and then they're traumatized, and they go boom, and you're traumatized. It's like you need each other, right? They're like, you'll know you're in codependence when your partner's like, you made me feel like this. Because of you, I felt like that. It's like, yo, I can't make you feel anything. So that's codependent. Then a lot of time what we do is we go to independent, where it's like, okay, well, I'll date a lot of people. And if codependence is 0 + 0 = 0, independence like 1 + 1 = 2. It's good. Dating a lot of people is very fun. So it's like, you could date different people. It's fun. You have sex, but you never want to put into it more than you're getting out of it. As soon as you have to give to it, but you're not getting back out, immediately you're like, right, like that. But when you have two people who are completely, or not completely, but more or less whole, they're whole people, and then you get into what's called an interdependent relationship. So you have codependence, independence, interdependence, and you have to travel through those. You can't just jump to there, because the codependent's like, I want to be interdependent. Like, no, you actually should probably be single. You're fucked up, and you and your partner are fucking each other up. And so what you basically have is to where you have to heal yourself, become whole. And then from there, if you meet a partner who's whole, now you can create synergy. And funny enough, weirdly, what you put into the relationship is actually what you get out of it. It's not what she does for you, but it's the growth that you both get through it. And funny enough, even in that relationship, even places where you might fight, it actually brings trauma to the surface that is lingering. And then because she'll kind of bring it out of you, or you'll bring it out of her. And then what winds up happening is you actually wind up healing that. So that can also be a very powerful thing too. But I think what you're seeing here is, again, letting go of trauma and bringing in that self-love that some of us might not have gotten as kids, or even if we did get it, there's still wounds along the way to where it needs upkeep. Okay? That's why in a lot of self-help programs, they literally will make you go around the room being like, I love you, and hugging people. It's kind of weird, right? It's very Burning Man. But actually, we do that a lot in self-help, because it really does heal people. It's very, very fascinating. You want to think a lot about wholeness, self-love, trauma healing, and getting that to your default eventually, to where now you're not in protection, but you can move into growth. You're not in coping and spending most of your day trying to stuff or medicate or escape or run away from trauma, like most people, but actually forming a degree of proactivity so that you could move up in your life and create a life of your own design.
If we're related, we'll meet. So today I feel like I've met my family, and everybody else here has also.
It's just amazing that something like this exists, that people can share with each other what they feel.
All the time I felt like there was something missing. I really feel like I've just addressed all these problems that have been sitting inside of me.
He's given me and everyone else in the room today tools to really let go of the baggage that you accumulate throughout your life.
I've been hanging around with people for 2 years. I have like a stronger connection to some of you right now than I have with them.
Now I'm sure that this is the right path.